You ever just grow up smart? I did. It's no fun. And it's a really strange thing to say about yourself, at least it is to me. Sort of weird to say I'm smart. I mean, I'm not some sort of genius, right? But I'm clearly at least moderately clever, and I have a lot of education that would be useless to most people, because who needs to know all these different things about just completely unrelated fields of knowledge? If you grew up as a gifted kid, or whatever, buzzword they used to use at your particular time and place, for being a little bit ahead in terms of the brain development when you were young, you will be familiar with this thought process. When you are young, no matter how unbelievably clever and smart and genius you are, you're still young. You're still dependent upon the adults that exist in your life. They have a lot of power and influence over you. And those adults, it turns out, I know this is weird, are their own people, individuals, flawed persons with, beliefs and prejudices and just gaps. I'm gonna take this time to talk about my own life story for a hot second here, which I know is it's a very extreme version of what a lot of gifted kids and just kids in general go through, so I hope that you'll be able to relate to at least some of it. I'm from what we call in Germany a socially weak background, which in my case meant a broken home of working class people that had ascended to the middle class in one generation. And of course, broken is the important bit. And when I say broken, I mean like a minivan totaled because a cargo train plowed through it level broken. Didn't meet my father until I was 13. Mother, mentally ill with a personality disorder. Hates her parents for having been abusive to her during her upbringing. They live in a different country. At the same time, they're also the only people that have the means to raise me in any meaningful way, so that's where I get sent to. There were like 3 custody battle court cases that I remember. I spent basically a couple years as just an emotional gratification tennis ball that got flung back and forth between 2 groups of people who really hate each other, and then whenever I was there, they would really attempt to impress upon me that I hate the other people and I love them, and then I'd be thrown back to the other people. So this was the first 10 years of my life. I finally ended up in Germany for good, and I went to the lowest tier of schools because they have a 3-tiered school system. I don't think they have it anymore in most states, but back then they still did. It was in the process of being phased out. And because I came from a different country with a different educational system, they had different priorities in how they would educate you, which didn't line up with the priorities in Germany, so they put me in the lowest school. So I ended up at the school that is basically for the working class people. It was like 50% children of immigrants. Basically the attitude that you have when you see this kind of school is like, okay, these people are going to be the dregs, maybe the worker bees of society. If we're lucky, let's try to keep them off the heroin needle, and maybe they can work like cleaning toilets or being a plumber, which is, often the same thing. I also ended up in a boys' home, or as you Anglos like to call it, the system, when I was 11, which is exactly what my grandparents told me would happen. Like, they said, look, if you live with your mother, in like a year, she's gonna be tired of having to take care of you, and you're gonna end up in a boys' home. And it was a year and a half. So that's an even lower status of society of people that I was surrounded by. People who had way worse homes than even I did. I remember this kid, he had like a scar here, and it was from where his mother stabbed him. 95% of them wouldn't even make it to high school in their educational career. And I remember throughout all of this knowing that I had a lot of confidence as a child. I was known for my confidence as a child back in Spain, which I think we all had back before we, experienced any sort of self-reflection. But then, when I did develop that shit as a teenager, things kind of went downhill for me, self-confidence wise. It seems to me, and this is after years of having discussed this in lengthy therapy sessions, that a significant portion of the adults in my life as I was growing up were just dedicated to making me feel stupid, or at least making me feel bad about being smart. I was very often told that being confident, actually, for me in particular, that's a bad thing. I shouldn't be confident about being smart. I was told that not only did I have no reason to be confident because I was literally just as dumb as everyone else, all evidence to the contrary, but also that, being confident in myself and thinking of myself as someone who had a certain amount of intelligence was hurtful to others and arrogant. And the reasons why the adults in my life were like this are also rather diverse, I think. There was a portion of them who just saw a kid from like the lowest of the low of the bottom of the social class order and decided that as a result I couldn't ever possibly achieve anything and that I should be actively stopped from achieving anything because I didn't deserve it. When I was the only one who ended up going to high school in my class, I remember one teacher telling me, I'm surprised that you made it this far. A lot of people in the teacher's lounge wanted to see you fail, which is a fucked up thing to say to a 16-year-old as an adult. Others I know for a fact were very concerned that me being smart and not hiding the fact that I was smart would make all of the other kids around me feel insecure about their own intelligence, which I'm sure some of them did. Most of them didn't. I didn't think of them as dumb people. To me, that was just the thing, okay, I'm smarter than these kids. But they all have things that I will never be good at, that they are already extremely good at. And let's be fucking honest here for a second. Being smart was neither my accomplishment nor my fault. There was one particular teacher who gave me bad grades in English, of all classes, and her justification for this was that she gave good grades to kids who, tried to make it, and because speaking English was so easy to me, I wasn't trying because I didn't have to, so I wouldn't get any good grades. But there were also those adults who felt insecure about their own intelligence and who were working in a profession, this was often, at home in the system, where they were surrounded by kids who weren't exactly the smartest of the smart, and I was outsmarting those adults, in this merciless, massive dickhead kind of way that you have as a teenager when you're clever. And of course I was wrong about a lot of things as a teenager, not as much as in retrospect I think maybe I should have been, but the ones who weren't massively insecure about their intelligence, what they would do is say, yeah, look, you'll understand this when you grow older, it's gonna be fine, because that's true. It doesn't matter how smart you are, some things you only get to understand as you gain perspective, and perspective you only gain with experience. But there were also people like a specific German teacher I remember who would humiliate me on a regular basis. Basically what he would do, usually at the beginning of the session, was he would ask me what some sort of very specific technical term meant in some field. He'd looked it up himself that morning. And then obviously I wouldn't know the answer because it's an extremely technical term. And then he would go on and say, see, you're actually not as smart as you think you are. Or the guy back home, one of the adults working at the facility where I was housed, who was always very, very fond of reminding me that, listen, you always have to remember that in the realm of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. You think you're smart enough to make it out of this milieu, but you never will. And I think these people in particular are the reason why every time I do fail at something, which is a completely normal thing that people do because most of the things you try in life you will fail at, that's how you learn. But now every time I fail, every time I'm not absolutely perfect, because they would nitpick the shit out of everything that I ever did, it's like they were right. And I'm wrong, and I'm an actual idiot, and I'm never gonna achieve anything in life. I still have a difficult time admitting when I'm wrong about pretty much anything. And this is after years of therapy, of cleaning myself from this particular trauma. I used to be completely unable to admit that I was wrong, even when I was clearly, demonstrably, factually incorrect. I was abandoned by everyone, living among the lowest of the low, and the only thing I had going for myself was that I was smart, and it just seemed as though there was a conspiracy to systematically dismantle this last shred of self-confidence that I had as a teenager. There was a significant amount of adults in my youth that went out of their way and dedicated a significant amount of time to set traps for me to make me feel stupid. Just fathom how petty this is. It wasn't all bad, of course. There were a lot of people, a lot of adults, who recognized that I was just smart. So the boys' home at one point, in order to prove that I was actually stupid, sent me to a child psychologist in order to do an IQ test. And at the end of the test, he came out and said, basically, when it comes to maths, he is functionally retarded. Like, he does not understand numbers at all. But if you disregard this extreme outlier in all of the categories, he has an intelligence north of 140. Unbelievable emotional intuition and linguistic intelligence. There were some teachers who were always firmly on my side. There were some people at the boys' home who were legitimately impressed with me. The other kids, they all trusted me. They elected me their group speaker. I would talk shit back to the adults, and they couldn't entrap me in some legalese bullshit. And I suffered a lot of consequences. So, you know, you have to, like, work a certain amount of hours, you have to go to bed early, you have to write texts. Just defending the other kids. But the people who believed in me, none of them were actually ever anyone who was truly in charge of making decisions about my life, least of all myself. I remember at one point somebody fought very hard to give me an opportunity to, like, ascend to a higher tier of school while in one of those tiers of school, which is something that happens, and I decided not to do it because, you know, I was at the lowest tier of school, but that's fine because all my friends are here, and the loyalty of my friends is the most important thing in the world to me. I never got the help I needed. I never was put in any sort of advanced education with any of the talents that I had. Sometimes they tried to put me in a program that they knew I didn't like when they tried to put me in the church choir, knowing that I was a very vocal atheist. I never got to make much of my brain. In fact, like, the opposite was the case sometimes. I've always wanted to be a writer. Like, ever since I was 11, I've wanted to be a writer. So what they would do is they would force me to do daily handwriting exercises and then tell me that my handwriting was shit and I could never become a writer because of this. And let's be honest, my handwriting has always been and continues to be absolutely atrocious. But also, you try and find me the editor or agent that will accept a manuscript written with your hand. But I was still breezing through classes. I never studied for a single exam for 13 years of education. And then when I went to university, something happened to me that happens to a lot of smart kids. I hit the wall. Look, in school, you're smart. You don't have to learn shit. Everything is a breeze. But then, when you get to uni, it turns out it's not actually about how smart you are, but how good you are at certain memorization techniques. They will drown you in a sea of information, and you have to navigate it basically on your own and have an unbelievable work ethic going about it. The other kids going to uni, most of them, they had all of these skills. They'd spent their entire education developing them, but me, having never been confronted with any sort of challenging material, I had no idea how to fucking learn things. It's like I was playing the tutorial on easy mode and then I got thrown right into the hardest region of the game. Because I had gone to the lowest tier of school, I had huge gaps in my education that had never become clear before because I could just bullshit myself out of any sort of situation. I had no support structure because my family didn't really want to have much to do with me or actively sabotaged anything that I was trying to do. And the great big beast of mental illness, probably triggered by this whole set of circumstances, reared its head and walked up to me and said, "Yeah, you know how you've had a really fucking traumatic childhood? Here's the bill for that. What happened at that point in time when I was at my most depressed, just completely alone in the world, save for a few friends who couldn't really do much for me because they themselves were struggling with their own shit, I finally realized that all of the people who had been breaking my bones, all of the people who had been actively sabotaging me, were right. I actually was an idiot. I didn't belong among any kind of educated or intelligent people. I belonged in the lowest dregs of society and nowhere else. That tore open everything, and the insecurity that I had been building up, like underneath the shell, just, it burst out like a volcano. It clouded my mind in ash. And even when the ash eventually dissipated, there was now a solid layer of cold, hard self-hatred covering everything I was. It took me a long fucking time in therapy to realize that this is bullshit, to chip away at even bits of this thick crust of self-hatred. To realize that, no, actually, I'm not stupid, and no, actually, the things that happened to me while I was growing up were not in fact my fault. But the scars are still there. They are pervasive. They appear in every aspect of my self-perception. When I'm out on a walk in the park and I feel like, I'm feeling good, I'm looking good, I'm dressing nice, I have a good aura, good attitude, I immediately feel guilty about feeling confident. Because there is something very deeply buried in my central programming that goes, no, actually, you're not allowed to feel confident. It's no good feeling confident. You should stop feeling confident. You are hurting other people by feeling confident. You have no reason to feel confident. People are very impressed when they hear that I'm a YouTuber, or that I self-published a book, this short story collection right here. To me, these things are unbelievably cringe. I have a huge hole of validation deep within my emotional corpus or soul, or whatever you want to call it, that really has made things difficult for me to maintain healthy relationships, and it makes me uniquely vulnerable to emotional predators. I have spent so much time and energy on just trying to fix myself a little bit that other people were able to spend on other things, like, advancing their career, developing a vibrant and interesting social life, and I never would have had to do any of that if I hadn't been steered off a fucking cliff by the people who were supposed to show me what road is best to drive on. And this is something that happens to many gifted kids. You either grow up to be unbelievably insecure, or you become arrogant, which, if you think about it, is really just a different way of being insecure, where you shield yourself from your insecurity by compartmentalizing. Your personal story is gonna look different than mine. It might be worse, it might not be as bad. There's no, need to compare suffering dicks. That's a pointless exercise. And I need you to understand something, and it's something that I've been trying to understand every single day for many, many years. Self-respect is not arrogance. You believe this because the adults in your life have systematically sabotaged your self-confidence. This doesn't even require you to get the gifted kid background and character creation. You could have the parents with a personality disorder background, which I also have. There's a lot of different, forms of life circumstances that can put you in this situation. You are allowed to feel confident in yourself and your abilities. In fact, it is healthy for you to feel confident in yourself and your abilities. The reason you feel guilty when you are confident and vindicated when you are self-hating is because the people who were supposed to build you up destroyed you instead. That's on them, not on you. And it's a fucking crime that you're the one who has to pay the cost of that. And there are people out there who are just like the ones who broke you. You will run into them over the course of your life, and they will smell about you that they can break you in some way. And they will do it simply because they can. Don't let them. Do not let them. You deserve better than that. These people are not your allies. In fact, on some level, they hate you. And they hate you so much that they want you to hate yourself just like the people who broke you in the first place did. And some of them are rather insidious because they will do it by being nice. But even if you can cut out all the people who are trying to sabotage you, you can't cut out yourself. You're always there. So what you need to do is you need to learn to stop hating yourself. In fact, you need to learn to love yourself, and that is a difficult journey to do when you are in the fucked up place that you are in. But it is a journey that you can make, and at the end of it, you will find happiness, which I know is an insane notion at this point, but also unbelievable resilience. I know some people who have made it. I know some people who are basically at the end of that journey, and they are unbreakable. Here's your first step to doing that, right? Imagine a best friend. A best friend that is better than any best friend you could realistically have, because those are other people that exist and have their own lives and their own worries. Imagine a best friend who is always there for you, no matter what. At any hour of the day, your best friend is always immediately there, and they are always on your side, and they always support you, no matter where you are in life, how you feel about yourself, or what you did. And now imagine that that best friend is you. You need to treat yourself the way that this best friend would treat you. This is not arrogance. This is becoming healthy. Your self-doubt and your insecurities, they're not gonna go away all that fast. You need something at the other end of the scale to balance things out. And I know right now there's a lot of you who are sitting there and there's a voice inside you that's whispering, no, actually, this will make you arrogant. This will make you lose all self-reflection. You will not be able to think about yourself in an objective way if you do this. You'll become a massive arsehole and a terrible person. Remember that inner voice, because that is the inner voice of everyone who has ever sabotaged you. Whatever that voice tells you to do, do the exact opposite. It will never act in your best interest. Ever. It is designed to not do that. Right now is the point where your mirror is distorted. You are seeing a completely misshapen image of yourself that only shows you your flaws, and what you need to do is apply a lot of force to bend that mirror back into shape. And then, when it's, the way a mirror is supposed to be, you will actually be able to see yourself for who you are. This is just the first step. There are a lot of others. There are a lot of other ways, a lot of other tactics, but I don't really like it when videos like this sort of leave you without any sort of solid advice, so may it take you very far. Thank you very much for watching this video. Like, comment, subscribe, share this to your relevant communities, but do not spam them. Consider supporting me on Patreon or subscribe, start buying some of my merchandise or my short story collection. And in that spirit, share your experiences about all this shit in the comments. I'm really curious to find out what other people went through in this kind of stuff, because it's fucked up. See you around, cunts.